Arthur Franklin Raper collection at the University of North Carolina is one of the most extensive collections on lynching today, and it is no small wonder. Raper himself was the research secretary of the Southern Commission on the Study of Lynching, and wrote several pamphlets about the subject. This instance of lynching, however, is unique among his records. Perhaps the reason he collected so many newspaper clippings and magazine articles on the subject. This is the first time the military mobilized in an attempt to save a lynching victim. Cartersville is a small town, even by rural Georgia standards, and in 1930 it was even smaller. On September 14th, the entire community was rocked by the shooting of Police Chief Joe Ben Jenkins, and a young Negro man named John Will Clark was arrested for it. After a farce of a trial, he admitted his guilt and was charged with murder in the first degree. He was only allowed to meet with court-appointed attorneys. His own lawyers were not granted visitation rights. By the murder of a policeman, locals screamed for the death penalty. Following the trial, Clark was placed in a holding cell, and that night a mob gathered outside, determined to lynch him. It was here that Sheriff G.W. Gaddis had a moment of clarity and called the governor for support, and more miraculous still, the governor gave it to him. 2 companies of the National Guard came all the way from Atlanta to protect Clark from the mob, and for a brief but incredibly significant moment, they were triumphant. As Cartersville was obviously unsafe, Clark was transferred from Cartersville to Atlanta. Even the capital, however, was no safe haven. The sheriff and the judge were praised for their actions, but Judge Claude C. Pittman saw no further threat and promptly transferred the poor man back to where he had nearly lost. On the 1st of October, 1930, a motorcade of masked men broke into the Cartersville jail, seized John Will Clark, and hanged him. Just hours before, his lawyers had tried and failed for a chance of venue, on the grounds that Cartersville was not safe. This delay in the trial had enraged the local people, and without the National Guard, they had seized their chance. However, the action taken by the Atlanta lawyers causing the postponement of the hearing for an indefinite period so incensed our people that I believe I am safe in saying the action of the men who took the Negro from the jail is not only condoned, but is met with practically unanimous approval. Commissioner A.V. Neal. The mob hanged Clark from the crossbeam of a telephone pole, barely a mile from the police station. At 10 a.m. the next morning, Clark was found dead of strangulation by local authorities. At first, the Georgia government was silent on the matter, as lynching in the black community had become tragically commonplace. Not one word of condemnation for those who tramped upon constituted authority and strangled a human being to death that justice might not be delayed. Not an intimation that an effort will be made to punish them for their double crime. Only justification, practically unanimous approval. Backlash, when it came, was uproarious. Newspapers, magazines, politicians. It seemed as though half the world was clamoring to condemn both the sheriff and Judge Pittman for their inaction. Newspapers claimed their actions were a deliberate invitation to the mob, that without military escort they were caught off guard, and that far more than 3 deputies should have been left to guard a prisoner who was so obviously in peril. This lynching was seen as even more atrocious than those in the past, because it was clearly preventable, and the only logical explanation was that those in authority did not want to prevent it. Judge Pittman scrambled to repair his reputation, but it was apparent that the damage was already done. You and I did not make these laws, but we are sworn to uphold and enforce them. Judge Pittman. This tragedy, however, was not completely in vain. Seeing the nationwide condemnation of lynching, other states such as Alabama became far more proactive in their campaign against lynching, actually saving lives instead of passively abetting murder. According to an Alabama newspaper, if this defiant contempt of a court, this outrage upon lawful justice, this absolutely unnecessary insult to the majesty of the state, is permitted to find immunity, to go unpursued by the judge, grand jury, and sheriff, condoned by whatever element of the community, then the humiliation of Georgia before the gaze of the nation will be complete. Georgia has the honor, if anybody wishes to so regard it, of having the top place on the lynching roll. From 1889 to 1927, the nearest full record at hand, we lynched 24 white persons and 433 Negroes, a total of 457. Nationwide, of the 3,680 persons lynched between 1889 and 1928, the whites were 783 and the Negroes were 2,897. Sam W. Smith, 3,680. Nearly 4,000 people condemned to a horrific death without trial or jury. The lynching of John Will Clark, however, did represent a turning point in the nation, a small sliver of light in the dark, because of the military action, despite its fleeting nature. According to Raper, he was the last lynching in the state of Georgia. Finally, the horror of lynching was realized, and no more innocents